Okay, A, opening meeting. A1, call to order. A2, pledge of allegiance. This is going to be a really interesting meeting this evening. A3, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a, are there any consent agenda items that a board member would like to have discussed as an action item? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion that the governing board adopt the meeting agenda?
I move that we adopt the meeting agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas.
I second.
Thank you, Ms. De Ocampo. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
B, public comment, and we have no public comments this evening. C, public hearing. C1, 2021-2022 school week calendar. And Ms. Biliou and Mr. Ruiz will come give us some information.
Madam Board members, Mr. Eastlis, Dr. Myers, evening to you all, Humber community, to everybody. We are here today to present the consideration for amendment to our current calendar, which is a adopted calendar of 144 days that we have to give some additional consideration to. So on to the next slide here, if we can give a little context, and many of you perhaps are aware of this already, but just to give a quick refresher, in late April, HB 2862 was passed, and what this included was the repealing of 15861 by statute that relates to a 4-day school week. And this is cause, of course, for consideration that we seek to amend our current 144-day calendar to include the stipulations of that repeal, which are that there are 20 days in each month of instruction, and that there would be 4 weeks with 5 days of instruction. So it is a consideration that is necessary as a result of this recent legislation in April. And to speak specifically about what the innovation of this bill brings is that it allows for multiple modes of instruction to count for an instructional moment, right? So this is kind of COVID new. It is specific to what the reality of our past year has been with the advent of distance learning being such a common thing in our educational environment, but it allows for things like project-based learning, for mastery-based learning, for distance learning to count as an instructional day, right? And so with our current 144-day calendar, we have to go back to the drawing board to see how we can get 180 days into the equation and then consider what that day on Wednesday is going to look like. So actions up to date here, we communicated with admin and teachers earlier, and what we did share was that the repealing of ARS 15861 was cause for us to make this consideration. And we communicated with them. We put a survey out to them to gather what their particular preference might be. Among the items that were determined on the very bottom there, you can see that staff overwhelmingly wanted that there were 9 site days assigned for Wednesday early release moments, 9 district days, and 18 teacher days, largely for the purpose of teachers having that opportunity to breathe and to plan and to do all the stuff that's necessary in returning back to school. On the next slide there, we can see that tonight we are holding our first of 2 public meetings, and we want to share with you the proposed calendar that includes the 180 days, and we also would like to share some next steps with you. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mrs. Biliou.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Islas and Dr. Myers. The purpose of the next slide is to illustrate the current reality related to the calendar that you have already approved for 21-22. This calendar does illustrate the discrepancies that Mr. Ruiz presented to you. Wednesday on this calendar is not counted as an instructional day. Preliminary plans were in place to support students at minimal levels, but there was no requirement for students to be present or even to engage. But we did have plans, teachers did have plans to support students on Wednesdays. So just as a reminder, the Alhambra calendar per practice is crafted through the calendar committee. This particular calendar with all of the breaks, the placement of the breaks, and the start and the end of the school year were all crafted by the calendar committee, and they created options that went to a vote for the staff to vote on. This was the calendar that was the overwhelming winner, and that's why we presented it to you for board approval. If you go to the next slide, the purpose of this visual is to show you that there are really no significant changes to the calendar other than Wednesday is considered an instructional day. The the previous calendar had 144 instructional days. This calendar has 180 days. HB 2862, that is all that it, we do have to have the hearings to readopt a calendar that is in alignment with HB 2862, but it does not significantly change anything about our breaks, our start date, our end time, where our breaks are placed. It truly does establish Wednesday as an instructional day, and that's really the only change. So with HB 2862 and the ability to count day as an instructional day, we did survey our teachers, and with the collaboration in collaboration with council and our incoming superintendent, we believe that a parent survey is appropriate to gather the perception and the expectation of our families as we move into the 21-22 school year. So if you'd move to the next slide, I did provide you a hard copy of the survey we plan to push out tomorrow. This survey does ask, it's very simple in nature, and it asks parents which school week schedule best meets the needs of your child or children. The options are 5 days at school, 5 days at home online, which then prompts them to enroll in our Alhambra Academy, 4 days in school with 1 virtual day with a learning space provided, or any of these learning formats fit my child's needs. We believe that this comprehensive set of data, the teachers and the parents will help us make the best decision for the district moving forward. The survey, as you can see, comes with an introductory message from Dr. Myers and shares, our belief about educating the whole child, and just asks their opinion on the schedule that they believe will best support their child. Tomorrow the survey goes out, and there are a few additional things we'd like to add to this presentation that we felt the board may have questions about. What about this? What about that? So Mr. Reese is going to come back up and address all the what about this and what about that.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm only today reminded about how hot it is to wear a coat. Some additional details, considerations that you all may have as questions with the consideration of technology. All of our students will have one-to-one devices, and hotspots will continue to be available for students with that particular need. In the case of curriculum, Canvas, our new learning management system, will be used to support our teachers with access to curricular materials and a really organized manner of learning management for staff and students alike. And master schedules will on Wednesday essentially mirror what takes place on, say, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So with minimal disruption, that Wednesday scheduling will be very similar to what it looks like on any other day, with the exception of it being a period of time. The instructional time model planning. Now, community relations, as Mrs. Bilyeu pointed out, will survey parents beginning tomorrow regarding their particular preference for instructional models. Council, our administrative council here at the district level, will evaluate all survey data to determine the final decision about what that model choice will be. And learning space plans will be finalized dependent upon parent feedback. So should there be an overwhelming response where parents are interested in a, say, virtual Wednesday experience, we will create the provisions to have those learning spaces available for those parents who need it. And then lastly, the Community Relations Department will communicate the finalized plans to all of our community stakeholders. As it relates to professional learning, Wednesday afternoons will be distributed, as I mentioned earlier, with 9 of those days being site-specific days, 9 of those days being district-oriented professional learning experiences, and then the remaining 18 early Wednesday afternoons assigned to teachers. And lastly, the student supports, regardless of which instructional setting or model is selected, child nutrition will support meals for students, along with transportation being an option for them as well. So lots there to digest and lots to consider. And at this time, we'd love to open it up for any questions you all may have. What we have here presented.
And I have a little sign on my monitor that says, speak into the microphone. So now I not only have a card, I also have a little message on my, so I will do my best to make sure that I am speaking with the microphone in my mouth, I think. So yes, I do have some questions, because when we originally passed this, it was a different time, different place. I know that people in my neighborhood were very they actually appreciated, a number of them, the fact that Wednesday was going to be not a half day, because they expressed that it was easier for them to just make arrangements for their children for all day Wednesday than to have to take a lunch break and go pick them up. But times are different now than they were 18 months ago when we talked about this. Our parents now have had their children home for 5 days in a row and their attitudes might be different. So I do have concern. I am glad you're going to do the survey, because I think we might find some differences in opinion than we did when we originally proposed this. We cannot afford to lose any more students to the multiple charter schools that I see opening up in our neighborhood. Our students deserve the quality of education that we can provide in our district, as opposed to what is oftentimes provided in a charter school. My concerns are, and I heard you address the options for those families that can't keep their kids home on Wednesday. So I want to make sure that that is an option that is provided, because many parents are not going to be able to have the capacity to work with their children at home in a virtual setting. I'm concerned about how you're going to staff those, I don't know what you're calling them, virtual, I don't know what you're calling those classrooms, but I'm concerned about how they're going to be staffed. I am concerned about, teachers can always find stuff to do, no doubt about it. Teachers always have more things to do than there are hours in the day. Teachers, so just so I'm clear, are the teachers on Wednesdays going to be doing virtual lessons at home with the students? Or is it something, so it's like it's live while they're doing it, or is it something that's pre-recorded that the students sign into?
Okay, so I believe I have questions. The learning space.
Learning space, thank
We're
you.
calling it a learning space. The staffing of that learning space would be appropriate child to student or child to teacher ratios. So child to adult. So depending on the number of parents who indicate they need a learning space, we would appropriately staff for that ratio. So we were very generous in staffing to support social distancing. However, in the event that a site does not have enough staff to support an appropriate ratio for their learning space, we would post and hire more staff. It would be an ESSER related, which means ESSER related funding. Regarding home or at school, currently that decision has not been made, but currently the school of thought that is surrounding that is that it would depend on the mode of delivery for the work, the type of work that the teacher is doing would determine where the teacher would sit. So if the work all day is virtual, it doesn't make sense to have them move into, the school environment. If the work is part virtual and part on campus, it doesn't make sense to have them drive in the middle of the day. So we were looking to establish where our staff sit for their work on Wednesday, depending on the type of work they're doing that day. Sense. If I'm virtually teaching and I'm virtually in a PD, is it necessary to make me drive to school?
Well, and that was one of our issues.
Right.
We were trying to cut down on emission control.
So
on
that is,
emissions.
right, that is still in discussion, and those are the kinds of conversations that we're having, but no decisions have been made.
And so when the survey comes back, then those decisions will be, just need to make sure we make decisions in a timely manner. School is starting in 2 months. Parents need time to, parents and staff. I know myself, by now, I would have already figured out the first month of school. Lesson plans, bulletin boards, whatever, I would have already had it done. So we need to make sure that our staff has time to adapt to the changes that could come forward as well.
Yes, within your presentation, there is a visual of the actual timeline with teachers returning and teachers returning
On
and
the calendar.
first day of school to give you a sense of, we did consider that. So the survey would go out on Friday. We would be expecting the survey to come back within enough time to propose to the board in our second public hearing, the proposed calendar, which is basically the visual that I showed you because there's no changes, and also the proposed instructional learning model. So on the 15th of July, we should have our questions answered.
Okay, and our staff being included in making, decision-making process on how those Wednesdays are going to roll out,
So we did
including principals.
did survey the staff regarding their preferences. That was
Showed
the
us.
survey that went. So we do have that body of data. And then we believe with the addition of the parent body of data that we will have a comprehensive set of data that we can make decisions moving forward.
Still doesn't, are we using what was in the handbook as the document that we had explained how we're going to be? That's still what we're using, that open to change after the surveys are cut.
So if students are in the building, they would still follow the same instructional master schedule that would be also used to support virtual instruction. So the number of classes that they attend on Wednesday would remain the same. The schedule would remain the same, whether a child is participating in a virtual manner on Wednesday or in their seats on Wednesday.
I'm going to have lots of questions as this rolls out, because we all know that the students have not learned as much as we would like them to in the last 9 months. Our teachers have been stretched to as far as they can be stretched with the virtual learning. Don't want to have another year where staff is stretched to that extent. Also want to make sure that our students are being provided the opportunities to learn that they need to.
I don't want us to be confused that we are expecting a hybrid model on Wednesday. That is not one of the options. It would either be a virtual Wednesday or an
Right,
in-person
right.
Wednesday.
Got that. I'm sorry, I hogged the microphone. I apologize.
I just would like to add one additional consideration that should the decision be made for a virtual Wednesday experience for teachers, the Ed Services team has put together with a new learning management system that we have a series of course shells for staff so that they will have immediate, easy access and not be a tremendously cumbersome experience for them to have to create any sort of coursework from scratch. So we are building in a great place for them all to kind of roll right into, should that be the decision that we make. So Ed Services is working diligently to provide those supports for teachers for the very considerations that you mentioned.
Thank you.
Just one last question about the teacher survey and the principal survey. When is the end of that?
That concluded. Yes, that concluded, it was early May because the HB 2862 was signed in the end of April. So that has already taken place.
Thank you.
Ms. Billy, can you provide just a summary of the teacher survey? Just the amount of people that responded and their preference, Mr. Reese or something?
Yes, I can respond to that. The survey was sent out to all certified staff members, including school administrators. And the return was at about 515 respondents. We did, within the middle of the time frame, provide an opportunity for staff members to submit a second response should they have considered and thought about it a bit more. And when we considered the duplicates that were submitted as a secondary follow-up, it was actually fairly minimal, with as few as 25 teachers. And so the response rate was largely at about 90, just over 90% of certified staff and administrators responding to the survey. So it was a fairly decent response. Were you looking for additional details about the survey?
And with about 70% wanting the current schedule that we are looking at? Or?
Yes, it was 68% had opted for Wednesdays to be a virtual experience, and a very similar response at about 70% opting for the distribution of Wednesday. There were fundamentally those two questions we were asking. You want to have in-person or virtual Wednesdays, and then what is the distribution of those Wednesdays look like? So it was at about 68% opting for the virtual Wednesday experience, with about 70% opting for distribution of Wednesdays with the 9, 9, and 18.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that might be where almost 70% wanted the virtual option. And then they, in knowing that the board has been very interested about how those Wednesdays staff development are sort of scheduled, then that's the information they provided about the 9 in-service, 9 staff, and 18 teacher days. So I just wanted to kind of make that more clear. Thank you.
And in my closing comments, I just want to say I really appreciate the collaborative model of communication that the entire team has put together, and making sure that you're thinking about a variety of different voices. So I appreciate that, and I see all the hard work that all of you are putting into this.
Madam President, may I make a comment? One of the things that I think is going to be difficult for the elementary school districts is that not much is changing from the perspective of the pandemic regarding elementary schools. As the healthy traffic light works through their systems and their protocols and processes, elementary school students are probably not going to get the opportunity to be vaccinated when you come back to school. So teachers being in front of 30 students in masks 4 days a week as it currently stands is much different than the teachers in the fourth quarter that maybe were in front of 10 or 15. So because of the vaccine not being available to elementary school kids, I believe that Wednesday provides a relief for the staff, and because it's going to be still high anxiety teaching during the continuation of the pandemic. Thank you.
Are we good?
Good.
All right. Thank you very much for the information. All right, move to D, consent agenda. D1, approval of consent agenda items. I call for a motion that the governing board approves consent agenda items D2 through D10. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda items D2 through D10.
Thank you, Mr. Ocampo. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchos. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to E, Human Resources. E1, title change for the 2021-2022 school year. I call for a motion that the governing board approve the title change of Director of Equity and Inclusion to Executive Director of Equitable Practices. Do I have a motion?
I move that the governing board approve the title change from Director of Equity and Inclusion to the Executive Director of Equitable Practices.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. De Ocampo. Any discussion?
Wait a minute, we are discussing this?
Mhm.
Because I understood it was going to be postponed. No, that,
We don't have a motion for that right now. We're discussing.
give me a minute to think this through.
Okay, so I have a few, first and foremost, I want to say that I am very much for this position. I agree with it. I understand why we need it. And I know why we need to elevate the role, especially at this time in society. I believe that Alana is key to moving us forward with equity and inclusion. I personally am really excited for her to have the opportunity to implement the job this year because I know COVID did not allow her that opportunity. I remember one time having a conversation with Mark and he was telling me what Alana was going to do. And in my mind, I thought that is not in her job description. However, I knew that COVID changed things. I really want you to have that opportunity this year. I am really excited to move forward with our retreat and all of our meetings and the discussions and the changes for this district to make sure that we are equitable and that we are inclusive. I think that is a #1 priority. That being said, I work at a school site. Every time a change is made at the district office, we say why. Because here I am in front of 30 kids every day, and now we have another move in the district office. Why don't I have an IA in my room? Because I really need help. So I want us to make sure that that doesn't happen in this district. I don't want teachers. I don't want principals. I don't want IAs. I don't want anybody questioning why we're doing something. I think we need to be extremely transparent as to what this position brings all the way down to the child. So I want to make sure that that happens. I also would like to have all of my governing boards in attendance, either in person or virtually, for this vote. And I would also like to postpone it so that this change is under the recommendation of the new superintendent. I want to again emphasize this position is extremely important to move us forward.
Okay, I guess I'm kind of in limbo here. We can talk about postponing. I will give my comments on the position. I agree with you. It's highly important. It's something that we need to do in the district. Commitments, resolutions, we put ourselves out there as being supportive of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I read these job responsibilities, and from what I can see compared to what was on the job description in the past, there are some very important things that have been added to this. One that sticks out to me is the Title IX training. That is something that's evolving over time with the changes in how we look at it. When it started out, it was getting more women on sports, and now it's more broader than that. So I think that is a huge responsibility that's been assigned to this position. I look at, there are a couple of statements, and I apologize, I didn't bring mine with me. There were a couple of statements that I thought were especially important as we move forward with this. I liked the idea where it talked about, it's not, and liking isn't quite the right word I need here. I believe it's important that the person in this position follow through with this statement, and I have no doubt that Ms. Alana Ragland will do that. The whole notion of making sure that we as a community have opportunities to have some of these hard discussions that we tend to want to walk away from, and that we do those hard conversations in a way where we all learn and grow and gain our own educational growth. Sort of repeated myself there, sorry. So as I look at the job description, as I look at what Kathleen has said, I do believe that this is an important position. I think if we are truly going to make a difference, if we are truly going to do the things that we talked about in our resolutions about Black Lives Matters, about anti-racism, we need to have a person who can move us forward and keep these discussions going, not only amongst us as staff members, but amongst our students and amongst our families. We all know that we have gotten to the point where we are in life through different paths. I've walked in my shoes, you've walked in your shoes. I've learned what I've learned, you've learned what you've learned. One of the biggest things I think I have learned through all of this is that these discussions are important. And it's not a matter of who's right or who's wrong. It's not a matter of who's giving up, who's losing, who's gaining. It's a matter of listening and having empathy and understanding. And appreciating again is not probably the best word, but realizing that we can coexist and still have differences of opinions. And we can do that in respectful ways. I think those conversations, those trainings with our staff, I think the curriculum that we provide for our students so that they understand where we as a population have come from and how we got to where we are today are very important. And so I am very excited about the person that we have in this position. I know that she has spent lots of time working on many areas of diversity, because it's not just about race, it's about a whole laundry list of things that, and again, I didn't say that very nicely. It's about a whole list of differences that we need to celebrate. So I know that Ms. Alana Ragland will help lead us through those discussions, and we will come out a better person at the end. Thank you.
Madam President, at the last governing board meeting, we approved the governing board resolution condemning racism and affirming our commitment to equitable anti-racist school environments for all. The quote was said, "You cannot change any society unless you take responsibility for it, unless you see yourself as belonging to it and responsible for changing it." And in the last part of the resolution, it says, "Let it be known that the Alhambra Elementary School District Number 68 Board of Directors recognizes that our district governing board members, as leaders and representatives of our community, are responsible for setting and modeling key values of the Alhambra Elementary School District and have a critical role in acting against racism and addressing educational disparities and inequities within our district." I'm going to read that one more time. Our district governing board members, as leaders and representatives of our community, and are responsible for setting and modeling key values of the Alhambra Elementary School District and have a critical role in acting against racism and addressing educational disparities and inequalities within our district. It goes on to say that student achievement and positive student outcomes are the central focus of the work of our school board, and opportunity gaps exist in every school, and that racism, both individual and systematic, contributes to these gaps. And Alhambra School District Governing Board members are responsible for setting the expectations and making decisions that support educators in closing these opportunity gaps. And increasing educational equity and acting against racism requires our school board to have trusting and collaborative relationships with the many communities we serve to be successful in our endeavors, and educational equity and purposeful Let me read that again. Educational equity and purposeful action against racism are ongoing journeys, not a fixed destination. So it be resolved that the members of the Alhambra Elementary School District Governing Board of Directors stand committed to leading and advancing in ways which support and advance an equitable and inclusive educational environment free of racism, where every student, teacher, staff, parent, and community member is treated with dignity and respect. Adopted at the last governing board member and passed unanimously by every single board member on this board. And so the reason I am speaking so passionately is that this job description says that the executive director of equitable practices for students and staff will work across AESD to promote an organizational culture of equitable and inclusive practices in alignment with AESD's diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI framework, ensuring access, opportunity, and optimal outcomes for students, families, and staff, in keeping with the district's mission and vision. And lastly, I will say that today is the last day of Mr. Isla's term as superintendent. His 6 years being here in this district, he has been determined to make sure that we have an equitable and fair and inclusive and anti-racist district. And he has built a trusting model so that all of us feel included, including myself, being a son of immigrants, being a person who is LGBTQ, and being a person who has been discriminated against personally because of the color of my skin. Our motto, which is right behind us, says educating the whole child and everyone matters. So I say all of this to say is that this is extremely important for me that we pass this today and that we make sure that we are setting up our new superintendent for success and making sure that we are leaders and committing ourselves to what we said in that resolution at the past governing board meeting, because we need to walk the walk. We cannot just talk the talk. Thank you.
And I want to make sure everybody understood I'm not against this position. I'm not against the position we have. I voted for it. I voted for both resolutions, and I completely believe in both of those. That being said, I would, and you said it yourself, we had a 5 unanimous board members. I would like to have all 5 board members present for this vote. I am asking to amend the motion.
Madam President, may we call the question?
What?
May we call the question?
Okay, I motion, well, we had our discussion. Yeah, roll call.
Ms. O'Neill Franz.
Nay.
Ms. De Ocampo.
Yes.
Mr. Oropesa.
Yes.
Mr. Conchas.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, move to E2, personnel actions. I call for a motion that the governing board approve the submitted personnel action. Do I have a motion?
That we accept the recommendations of the personnel action.
Thank you, Ms. De Ocampo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. O'Neill Franz.
Aye.
Ms. De Ocampo. Mr. Oropesa.
Abstain.
Mr. Conchas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, move to F, Business Services, F1, 2021, 2022 proposed annual budget. Sorry, Mr. Huseman?
President O'Neill France, governing board members, Superintendent Myers and Mr. Islas. I didn't really have any comments prepared for the proposed budget. I usually don't make comments, but let me just say, this is our proposed budget, and it's required according to Arizona revised statutes that we propose it, allow for public comment over the next 10 days, which will have more than that because the adopted budget will be called and voted for on the July 15th meeting. And we are using kind of projected budget numbers at this time. As you know, the state legislature has not, the House and Senate have not both passed a budget. So there's not a K-12 education budget at this time. We're using the base level from the previous year, and we're using projected numbers and projected budget numbers for this budget. So we will revise this later in the school year once we get the legislature to finally pass a budget, update the budget forms. So pending any questions you might have, includes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Huseman. I call for a motion that the governing board approve the proposed 2021, 2022 annual budget as presented. Motion.
I move that we approve the proposed 2021, 2022 annual budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. De Ocampo. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Move to F2, approval of the Head Start entities. I call for a motion that the governing board approve adding 5 separate Head Start entities within the Alhambra School District for the 2021-2022 school year. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the additional ID entities for the Head Start programs in our district.
Thank you, Ms. De Ocampo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, in G, in your informational items, you have the financial report. And then you also have the information on creating your kitchen. So moving to H, comments and communication, H1, comments from the governing board. I just want to take a minute to, after the superintendent search, we had a board meeting and it was just, it was it took a lot of effort mentally to, go through that whole process and pick a superintendent. So at the next meeting, I wasn't prepared to really think much about that process because I just wanted to kind of let it settle. So I wanted to say, first and foremost, I need to thank everyone behind the scenes that really made this transition and search smooth. We were on a tight timeline, as everybody knows, and all of Alhambra employees really stepped up and did their part to make sure that we were able to stay on our the timeline, the agenda that we had presented. So first, I wanted to thank Jessica and her communications department. I want to thank Claire and HR, Ruben and Crystal in technology. Please tell your departments how much we appreciated all their support, everybody behind the scenes. We may not have seen them all, but we know they were there. Maintenance, thank you for setting up our facilities. And I would definitely be amiss with not talking about this woman that sits to my right. First and foremost, I don't know what I would do without her. I would not be sitting here without Dana. She is, I don't even think she's just my right hand. I think she's my left hand also. She is so instrumental in making me, I don't want to say I'm successful, but she's instrumental in making me be able to sit here and conduct these meetings. And she did quite a bit to support us in the search. So Dana, I just want to say on behalf of the board, you are amazing. We appreciate you, and truly, we would not be able to do this without you. You are the 6th board member, and I don't want you to ever forget that. No, thank you. And then I would like to, first of all, say that I feel bad that Mark didn't want a goodbye. I forgot that this was even going to be his last meeting until he said something. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your 6 years of service. I remember our very first meeting at Dunkin' Donuts, and we sat there for a long time and discussed a lot. And I remember talking to you about signature schools. I told you that's really what I wanted, and you moved forward, and look where we are right now. I personally truly appreciate you and everything you have done for this district. I am going to miss you. I'm going to miss your friendship. I'm going to miss your leadership, and I'm going to miss bossing you around. But aside from that, no, I'm going to miss being your boss. But I just want to really seriously say thank you. And I want to make sure everybody knows there is not a celebration because he would not let us to have one. So it is not because we didn't want to have one. He truly would not let us do anything. So again, Mark, thank you. Best wishes in Agua Fria. I know you're going to do amazing things there, just like you did here. So thank you for everything that you've done for us. And I truly appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Mark, it's my turn. I'll echo everything that Kathleen said. I have had the pleasure of working with you in 2 different settings. Got to work with you as a fellow principal. I remember how successful you were there and how much for years afterwards, go on that campus, the teachers would say, well, that's the way Mark does it. So you left your mark there, for sure. I've had the opportunity to work with you, seen the mark that the global community of the school district truly live your belief of servant leadership, truly believe your idea of building trust, work so hard at making sure that all that trust, that those trust initiatives part of our lives here. Have built up some amazing programs here. You've allowed us as board members to be a part of so much of that training. Know that our loss is Agua Fria's gain. So good luck, congratulations, and you will definitely be missed.
Madam President, before I get to my thank yous for Mr. Islas, I would like to say thank you to our food and nutrition department for the summer meals execution and making sure that our children are getting fed throughout the summer months. I also took a tour of the Alhambra Resource Center and just want to say that the entire team over there is doing a phenomenal job. I visited the I Care for Kids site, and one story that I have is we had, I'll call him Spider-Man Boy. He came in and he was with his mom, and it was obvious, you know, it was one of the first rains during the summer, and they had towels covering them because they walked to the site. He walked in and he was just super excited. He showed the person that was out walking them, and like, here's my glasses, and showed them that they were broken. So he was super excited that he was going to be able to get them fixed. And it was really funny because when he took them off, he's like, I can't see. And then, you know, the staff was just so reassuring. Like, don't worry. We're like really excited. We're going to help you. We're going to make sure that we get them fixed for you. Here's what you need to do, this and that. So that was just a really heartwarming moment for me because, you know, who knows if he would have been able to get those glasses fixed if it wasn't for all the hard work, tenacity, that the staff here in this district and at the Alhambra Resource Center do. So I just want to say thank you for that amazing tour of not only the clothing closet, the food boxes, the refrigerators for food, and also the library. So, and also want to say thank you to Gabriel, who is in our marketing department for taking some really good photos of the entire tour. So I really appreciate you. The other thing I'd like to say is, I just want to say that with Mr. Islas, I've only been able to serve on the board for about half a year, 6 months with Mr. Islas. But throughout that time, I have learned so much, and I have learned to be able to speak my truth, to be able to represent the folks in the community to the highest standard. And one thing I'll remember from one of my conversations with Mr. Islas, the first one is, we always have to ask, is this the best standard that we can have for our learners, or can we do more? Is there more? We need to have the best school district in the entire state of Arizona and in the entire country. So are the decisions that we make on the board level and every single day going to make sure that our children have the highest standard? So with that, Mr. Islas, I'm going to take that with me my entire life. And I just want to say thank you for being a public servant. Thank you for being a servant leader. Thank you for showing that everyone matters. And then lastly, you helped us through this pandemic. You led the state of Arizona by closing these school sites because you knew that they were unsafe. And you saved lives. You saved lives through that decision. And also, I remember I was not very fond of us coming back to in-person learning, but you had a plan, you had a team together, you thought everything through, you executed, and the entire state, we were ready when the executive order came through that we had to come back to in-person learning. So really going to miss you, and just going to say that, there's generations of children and families in our district that are going to benefit from your leadership. And we hope that you have the best success and make the best high school district ever in Agua Fria. So thank you so much, and you'll always be part of the Alhambra family. That's it.
Okay, moving to H2, governing board direction and/or agenda item request. I would like to explore the idea of after-school care. And also, as we move forward with our signature schools, I'd like to also explore the idea of having a dual language program in Alhambra. If we are trying to increase our enrollment, possibly those two items might be something that parents might start bringing more kids to our district.
Madam President, would like an update at our next board meeting on how we're doing with recruiting students to return to our school districts, to our schools in the district. I think it's important that we stay on top of that as we move forward.
Moving to H3, comments from superintendent and executive team.
President O'Neill France and members of the governing board, I thank you very much for allowing me this last opportunity to speak to all of you and the Alhambra familia that I've been a part of for 6 years. And I have a list of names that I just want to read off in saying thank you to, but I want to start out with my leadership team. As Mr. Conchos mentioned, we were unbelievably, amazingly great and good this year in taking care of people. As soon as Claire Perry put Mark LaLiberty in charge of our COVID response, along with Michael Rivera and their team, we knew that everyone was going to be in good hands. So I wanted to start off by, I don't know if Mark LaLiberty took a day off during the entire high stakes pandemic. He might have just taken one off about a week ago. So our most valuable player this year is Mark LaLiberty. So I want to say thank you. I next want to, second thing I want to do is thank the staff for my 6 years for having trust and believing in our journey and what we wanted to do together. I think that as has been mentioned, we've created a great culture here, and we have some amazing teachers and support staff that all came together and have made this an outstanding district. I want to thank the parents for trusting us and believing in us and with all the method to our madness, always being in our corner as we pushed to do better and better things for our kids. It's an unbelievable community. And then there are a list of people that I'm going to mention that I've worked closely with over the years as the superintendent, working with the board. And they are Kathleen O'Neill France, Garthan de Ocampo, Lupe Conchos, Christian Solorio, Manuel Orapesa, Adam Lopez Falk, Ray Martinez, Mari Alvarado, Tanari Ochoa Martinez, Robert Zamora, Dana Lucero, Jeannie O'Callahan, Constance Edgar, and Lisa Elliott. Um, in leading a school district, it takes a lot of people to do that. And I can mention all our leaders one by one, but we'd be here longer than everybody wants to be here. But the people that I just mentioned are those that have helped guide and steer me, and helped us create this great culture that we have here. I also want to thank Mandy and Melissa. Mandy and Melissa are major league, and they had to deal with all of my high expectations on a daily basis. And in our model, Mandy and Melissa and Dana were pretty much running the entire district. So I appreciate that. And Madam President, on my last meeting, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eastless. Meeting closed. I1, next governing board meeting will be July 15th, 2021. I2, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.